a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempt a mental robbery, executed sloppily. Hypocrisy, this mockery, and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful. Friends, welcome back to Rogue Soul, where tonight we're talking about pandas and whether or not they're real. Spoiler alert, they're real. And we'll talk about why that is most likely true. There's always level, science, authority, anything, no matter who, teachers, whatever, people who have studied something for decades, everyone could be wrong. You always have to accept that. But pandas are real, and we can have a 97% accuracy with that, which is about as accurate as you can get with anything. And so I think you may agree with me by the end of this that pandas are real. You may be asking yourself, why does anyone need to talk about whether pandas are real? Well, no one really needs to, but I think it's a fun exploration. And there are actually people who are very, very serious about claiming that they aren't real. So, we had the birds are fake, sort of fake conspiracy theory that went viral, and it was fun. It's sort of like the Tide Pod eating thing where no one really took it seriously. That was what was funny about it. But then people who know nothing about conspiracy theory or generally do eat Tide Pods. My screen keeps blacking out here, so I hope you're actually hearing and seeing me this whole time. But yeah, kids don't eat Tide Pods. Again, after it became viral and whatever, and it was hilarious, maybe someone did here and there, but it wasn't really a thing. It was a joke to see if people would actually believe that that's what kids do. And it was a joke that people would actually believe that people don't think birds are real. And then, as always the case, like someone will believe it. So this is actually why I was going to start a church, for tax reasons and for religious, for spiritual reasons, for sure. And I didn't, because I was like, no matter what I make, it has the potential, like Scientology, to like become something people actually believe in and make cults around. And I'm just not willing to put that out into the universe. So, the birds aren't real thing is like that. So is the Tide Pod thing. People who actually started this, who actually think pandas aren't real. And that's why I want to talk about it. If you think they're not real, cool. If you think they are real, cool. Whatever your thoughts, we'll get into it here. And so go to roguesoul.org to see everything I do. You can see my spiritual healing and book sessions. You can see the ceremonies I offer. You can go to the shop. You can see everything that's available there. Very powerful, beautiful orgone. And actually, while we're here, I'll let you all know that I have a heart-centered healing course coming up in September 14th through. This is via Zoom. It's distance, so no matter where you're at, you can do it. Even if you can't make those exact times, every class is recorded, so you can come back to it during the course of the course and for a few weeks afterwards. And you're going to learn step-by-step how to heal yourself and others, spiritual healing, mental, emotional, and physical healing, all through a spiritual channel. This is for anyone from beginners to people who already use some sort of spiritual skills or techniques. So it's for anybody. If you're not sure, you don't know, and you want to just connect about it, I'm also offering free 15-minute consultations if you want to just check into whether or not this is right for you. This is here on my shop. Even though it will be via Zoom, you'll be emailed the links and all of that as the time gets closer. There's going to be course materials. There's also going to be workshop sessions that we set up together based on when people are available and can do it with the best up in September to October. I hope you want to join us. That's here in the shop, again, at roguesoul.org, along with everything else. My books are here and all the good stuff. I also would like you to subscribe at rogueways.substack.com right now. If you haven't yet, you can do it for the free level or the paid level. The free level gets you all of the articles and previews of the channeled source messages. The paid level gets you all of the articles and the source channeled messages. So that's all here at rogueways.substack.com. Lots of channeled messages through the spiritual ancestors, lots of articles, and mostly spiritual content, but sometimes I write about health and wellness and other things. I also announce events and classes here. So you would have heard about the 8-8 Lionsgate here first if you are even a free subscriber. And most rogueways.substack.com. So we're going to start here. Here's a subreddit. It's under the subreddit funny, but it's also a lot of people who are really wondering. And it says, first post, I'm fairly certain pandas are just extremely elaborate hoax. Just an extremely elaborate hoax. There's a picture here of a panda on a sort of playground horse that rocks back and forth, and a panda next to him sitting in a rocking chair and eating a carrot. And so it is pretty interesting behavior that we see from pandas. A lot of people have pointed this out. They're very comical. They seem stupid. They seem clumsy. They do things we don't see other bears do. And so this Reddit post goes on to have many people comment on it. One person says, I've been saying this for years. I don't buy it. They look like people in panda costumes. And this is a lot of people, but even really prominent people in the sort of alternative are in fact not real and are people in costumes, people in panda suits. And I'm sure that's happened. I'm sure there's people in panda suits. But I'm also relatively sure, as I said, that pandas are real. We'll get to why. People said, I always imagined them as people who dressed up as pandas and were mistaken for a real panda and just kept going. Someone says, a few years ago, I saw a similar picture to the one I just described to you on this thread that contributed to my username. Their username is a panda on a seesaw. Since then, I've been amazed at how many pictures there actually are of pandas on seesaws. It's true. Part of the reason why, by the way, is because there's only one or two, like not many places in China where pandas are being bred, and barely, but we'll get to that. And they have things like they have seesaws and they have rocking chairs and they have, they've seen their panda parents playing on these toys. And so they're going to do it too. So you're going to see a lot of it. So that's not that weird, but I would understand if you didn't know that. They are endangered. They're nearly extinct, supposedly. It says, yeah, what if there's a whole conspiracy going on here? Someone else comments. Maybe the Chinese have been fooling us for years. And that is actually the alleged conspiracy here, is that the Chinese made this up. They're not real. They did it as like a PR campaign. And it's just people in panda suits. And that's what's going on. Again, some people just jokingly talk about this. Many people are very serious about it. Somebody says, when I was in Chengdu at the Panda Sanctuary, they do surprisingly human things. They climb on jungle gyms and play on rocking horses. They also like to eat and sleep, which is right up my alley. Pandas not being real. So here, this adds to the confusion and the conspiracy fodder. And this is a zoo that had dogs dressed up or spray painted basically to look like pandas. And they're very cute panda-looking dogs, but they're definitely not pandas. It says panda dogs. Chinese zoo goes viral for luring visitors with painted pups. Adorable little dog pandas. They are definitely dogs painted as pandas. And so again, this zoo went viral. They had these painted pups. They were trying to attract people and say they had pandas, and they didn't. But this makes it really confusing for people who are trying to determine if pandas are actually fake or not, because if you have these examples, not only of humans having been in somewhat realistic looking panda suits, but also dogs being painted as pandas, then you seem to have a lot of evidence of pandas being faked, right? And this is in addition to their bizarre seeming behavior where they're just on toys and they're doing, monkey bars and they're on seesaws and all this stuff that you're like, well, bears don't really do that. That's not what bears act like. So it makes it hard. It makes the conspiracy seem more realistic. And so, when I was first thinking about this, because I like to be open-minded about everything, say, okay, yeah, maybe pandas are fake. Let's see the evidence. It's like, yeah, this is pretty damning, right? This is strike 2 now. They do act really strange and seemingly unlike other bears. They have a lot of people in panda suits. They have a lot of dogs dressed up as pandas. So, it's not looking good for pandas being real. But things go on. It's also true, by the way, that breeding pandas is incredibly hard. Really, really difficult. And, we have more and more cloning technology, and who knows if they're going to start cloning pandas, but that doesn't seem to be the best idea. It doesn't seem to create the most robust beings. When we've had cloned beings in the past, they often have weird genetic anomalies, or they seem weaker, or they seem feeble-minded, or sometimes they seem evil. So there's a lot of weird stuff with cloning. Whether it's functionally appropriate or not is not clear. But they're notoriously hard to breed. You can't force them to, seemingly. They won't carry things to birth. It's they say a little bit over 300 pandas are in captivity right now. They also say 1,600 are in the wild. I don't know if that's true. China, you really can't trust, and this makes it a lot harder as well. China will absolutely lie about things to make themselves look better, to get PR. So again, this is like kind of a strike against them. But it's not untrue. A lot of animals are harder to breed in captivity. It's not like it's weird how hard pandas are to breed in captivity. A lot of animals just don't. Just like you might not if you were in captivity. If you're not feeling sort of flush and like abundance is probably likely, like you might not be likely to breed. We can watch this through all species, actually, humans included. This is why we have the boomer generation, because it was a baby boom, because people felt flush and they felt abundant and they felt successful and won the war and the economy's booming. And so they had all these babies. No one convinced them to. No one said, hey guys, it's time to have babies. But this is just what species do. And then when you're feeling the opposite and you're feeling sick or in captivity or depressed or repressed, you aren't as likely to successfully procreate or even want to or choose to. So it's not that weird that pandas have a really hard time being bred. So again, I could see how this would feed the sort of conspiracy, and I could also say that's not actually that weird. Some people, in fact, part of the conspiracy or what makes them believe it is that bamboo is their primary diet, that pandas primarily eat bamboo. They say that's weird. There's no other animal that only eats one thing. Well, that's just not true either. There's plenty of species that eat primarily one thing. I think manatees are another example. I think there's a ton of examples. We could probably pick it from every sort of kingdom and phyla or whatever, right, of all species, that there's probably a lot that mostly eat one thing. Whales mostly eat plankton. I think they only eat plankton. So that's not weird either. There are a lot of examples of omnivores and things that eat all sorts of stuff. And there's plenty of examples of things that just eat one thing. So, and it's not actually true that pandas only eat bamboo. It is 99% of their diet. So, it's fair to say they only eat that, but they technically eat other things. They even eat small rodents and animals. And this is another thing that you get into this with vegetarians or vegans and they hate it, but they'll be like, oh, gorillas don't eat meat. Well, they do. In fact, they eat other monkeys and chimpanzees and things. So sometimes they do that even. And they definitely eat small rodents. And that's not a huge part of their diet, but like they do it. And they hate that. And they'll probably hate that pandas do too, because they want to believe that they're also vegan. They're not. It's interesting because they do have a carnivore digestive system. Their digestive system works like a carnivore. They have the teeth for it if they wanted to. But they've, adapted seemingly to this abundant bamboo. Bamboo grows quick. There's tons of it. It replaces itself easily. Like it's a good food source if you can make it a food source. This is why we see all these bamboo everything, bamboo shoes, bamboo clothes, bamboo cutlery. Like there's just bamboo because it's so easy to grow. It grows so fast, so easily. You have bamboo everywhere, and pandas are cashing in on that, as you would if you could eat bamboo too, right? We actually can, but in a very specific way. They could just eat it straight off the land without any preparation. So it works for them. But again, I could see why you'd point to this and be like, really? Like that doesn't sound very realistic. But when you really get into the world and the universe, nothing sounds realistic. You look at an octopus and you start wondering if anything is real. Like those things don't even make sense. You're like, how are you a real creature? You can do all this instantaneous color, texture, and shape changing just in a nano moment. You're just a different thing now, like by all intents and purposes. They're crazy. Everything's crazy. The more you look at anything, you're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And that's the whole universe. So it's not that weird that pandas just ate bamboo, actually. And here's this movie I watched. I actually watched this accidentally right after I first learned that there were people who genuinely believe that pandas aren't real. And I had sort of looked into some of the arguments, and I'd sort of been, like I said, open-minded and like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, are pandas real? And I was still, to be honest, leaning towards, yeah, they're probably real. But a lot of the arguments are pretty convincing, as we've seen, or could at least make you ask really good questions, which is totally cool. And so I was asking those questions too. And then I was on a flight, and, you've got all these movies and they're all stupid. And then one of them was a documentary about pandas. So I was like, oh, cool. Just even if I hadn't just heard about this conspiracy theory, I'd still want to watch this because I like documentaries and I like animals. So watching this documentary, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting, actually. They go into all of these places in China that are breeding pandas, or doing their best to breed pandas and to raise them. And you start to realize why pandas act the way they act. And that's not what the documentary is about. The documentary is actually about, one more thing. We'll get to that too. The documentary is actually about this guy going to China to try to help them successfully reintroduce the pandas they're breeding back into the wild. Because as we said, maybe they say there's however many thousands of wild, 1,600 or something wild pandas. They really don't have any evidence that there's any. So they're trying to get these possibly last pandas on Earth able to live and exist in the wild. They've got these thousands of square kilometers or whatever of natural habitat. They've got it fenced off. They want it to be a nature preserve, and they want pandas to live there independently on their own, breeding on their own, all that. So it's a noble pursuit. So it's beautiful. And so this guy's from the US, and he does this with baby bears here. So they're like, oh, well, you already do this. You come to China. So this is Ben Kilham. He's a big part of the documentary. And when there's orphaned black bears or other types of bears in the northern hemisphere, in the northwestern hemisphere, he gets to rehabilitate them and raise them in a way where they can then easily go back into the wild. So he kind of acts like a wild bear with them. He kind of gives them like wild amounts of independence, even when they're really tiny. He takes them out into the woods every day, and he just sits there while they wander off and climb trees and get into trouble, just like they would if they were wild bears. He lets them do anything they want, because that's essentially what wild bears do. And then he brings them back, and he tries to give them food and feed them in a way that they would maybe be getting from their mother, right, if they were in the wild. And he does this such a good job that he continuously gets brought these orphaned bears to do this because he's so good at it, and he has such a high success rate. And it's not actually that common to have a good success rate at getting animals like this back in the wild, because they have such a long childhood that by the time they're used to you and used to humans and used to human environments, they're not going to do well in the wild, right? So he has this approach that's unique in that he mostly has them in the wilderness most of the time and mimicking wild behavior, and very, very little human interaction, very, very little human habitat. And that's what's successful about it. So he's a cool guy. You could do a whole thing just on him and the cool work that he does and how good it is, and really, really neat. So that's Ben Kilham. So he is in this documentary where he goes to China, and they're, trying to get their pandas in the wild, and he's trying to help them. That most of the documentary, I think, I don't know if they were trying to present this or not, but if you have a critical eye, at least you'll see this, that they're never going to succeed. And it's not the panda's fault. It's the humans' fault. They don't even understand even a tiny bit about what this man's trying to teach them. They don't actually even understand that what they're supposed to do is exactly what he says. They only know how to do what they've been doing the whole time they've had these pandas in these types of settings. And that is essentially what you're seeing on the screen right now, which is a bunch of baby pandas on their backs holding baby bottles while masked and robed doctor-like, nurse-like humans sit there and baby them. That is the farthest from wild behavior as you could get. These animals are just sitting here with baby bottles being babied by humans in a human environment, as we've talked about, with seesaws, with playground equipment, with all of this stuff that you would never have in the wild. And it's not like it's horribly unintelligent. It makes sense. You want to give them the food. You have these bottles. It works for babies. Give it to the bear. They can hold it like they get food. Okay, but they would never be doing this in the wild. It makes sense that you're like, well, if you give them all these jungle gyms and stuff, they'll climb around like they do in the wild, but they wouldn't climb on jungle gyms in the wild. They'd climb on trees. They'd climb on downed trees and fallen trees and stream beds and all sorts of stuff, but not on a seesaw. So that the intention is there and they just don't get it. And he's there and he's like, look, if you want babies that then can be in the wild, you have to have them in the wild most of the time. And they're like, oh, okay. And they like pretend like they agree with him or like his idea or whatever. And then you watch them take all this time and effort to take one bear they've selected out of all their bears and bring it to a wild type of area that's still very enclosed and very human. And it took all this effort and time and money and all these people and all these cameras and all this bureaucracy to get this one bear into this slightly wild setting where they could also be sure they could get it right back and put it right back in the panda zoo, right after they're done. And you see that this could never work then. You can't, if it takes you this much effort to get just one of your many bears slightly into a wild for one time in its life, you're never going to succeed at this. But they're committed, right? They want this good PR. They want also to feel like they're doing good things for the panda. Again, I don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're trying to fail. It's a different culture. It's not crossing the cultural barrier well. It's just not perhaps it's the structure of Chinese communist society. We could do a whole episode on that, but it's just not getting through. And so they work and work and work, and they keep taking this one bear into little wilderness experiences over and over again. And you can tell it's a big deal every time, and it's not even that much wilderness exposure. And you're like, I don't know how this is ever going to succeed. And they finally get to the point where they're like, okay, we've got this bear fitted with the GPS collar, and we've got this new, giant wilderness that's fenced off. That's just, you can go roam and never come back. We might never see this bear again. And it's cool. They're ready. We've seen them, eat bamboo in the wild and all this stuff. So they put this female panda, who is now an adult, through the fence into the wilderness, and they leave her there. And they're watching her, and I can't remember. I'm going to say, spoiler alert, by the way, if you don't want to know how the movie ends, skip ahead a few minutes. I want to say just a few weeks, not that long. The GPS signal stops moving. So they say oh no, something's wrong. And they wait a little while to see, maybe it's just a longer sleep or something. No, now it's been days and this hasn't moved at all. So they're like, well, she's probably dead. And they go out and they find her. It takes this huge effort because she's out in just the extreme wilderness, mountainous, hard terrain. There's no roads or anything. It really is a wilderness preserve. And they finally get to her, took all of this effort, and she's alive, but barely. And she's very clearly been attacked by something, nearly killed by this thing, and has hidden in this tree to die, terrified to come down from it. And you see her see the people, and this relief spreads over her. She's like, oh my God, I'm saved. You can tell that she's just like, I can go home now. She didn't want to be in the wild, perhaps. She thought she did. It seems nice. But then she met what? I don't know, a tiger, right? There's tigers in this area. Something like that, at least. She's cut up. She had not a chance. You can't put a single female panda into a vast wilderness. They're pack animals. And she's only had a tiny bit of experience in very tame wilderness right next to humans. She has no idea how to survive. And she doesn't have the pack to do it. She doesn't have a group to fall back on. She has no sort of protection or safety. So of course she failed. And what a traumatizing experience for her. And she gets brought back to the zoo. And they basically call this experiment a failure. And they're one step closer, if not the final nail in the coffin, of not reintroducing pandas to the wild. Okay, and you compare this now to the man we were just talking about, who's done this with hundreds of bears. They're not different from the panda bears. And it's successful, but it's a totally different way. And they go back, and they have a group, and they're alone a lot of the time too. Bears are often very solitary, but they have, groups for a while as well. And, it just works. It doesn't work with the pandas for various reasons, as I've outlined. Again, also, if you've ever hung out with animals long enough, you understand how they change when they're around people. You're a different being. You have a lot more to offer them, and they know how to act in a way that pleases you or just pleases you or gets them snacks or gets them belly rubs or many other things, right? So pandas acting like weirdos in a zoo makes sense if all of their many generations have grown up in this very strange setting and they have no predator at all, they have no danger they've ever faced, they act like fools, as you would do if you were born in a weird, Truman Show, like clown show space without any danger. So that makes sense to me. But people have said, again, back to the things that make sense as a conspiracy and to criticize, why are there no pandas in historical Chinese art? And it's a great question. This is why I love conspiracies. There are some great questions. A lot of conspiracies are real. There's really good critical thinking skills that are applied. And this is one of those examples. Why aren't there pandas in Chinese art and historical documentation? And this is a history.stackexchange.com. It's sort of like the Reddit of more serious people, perhaps. But, somebody says something seemingly anomalous within China's historical record is the lack of giant pandas within almost any art until the 20th century, right? So the 1900s is all of a sudden we see pandas, and before that we don't. This person says, I found a paper in Polish, but with an English abstract, which attempted to find an explanation for this. There's mention of white bear, it says. This was a local Chinese name for the giant panda, but that wasn't registered until 1869 by a visiting, probably a Catholic or something. It says Father Armand David, who discovered giant pandas for the Europeans. And they talk of two common bear species in China, the Asian black bear and the brown bear, with some subspecies called white. The authors take note of the fact that the known contemporary image of a giant panda is a black and white animal is due to the discovery of the black and white Sichuan subspecies of the white bear. So this Polish paper is tracking the sort of discovery of, naming of, and then seeing why it was called this and why the black and white panda is actually not really mentioned ever, but these other three species of bear are. So he goes on to talk about it. And they're still like, yeah, but like, why wouldn't there be even one painting or like one story or like one poem that specifically describes the white and black of the panda bear? But this also describes, which is true, that you can't actually find most Chinese species in paintings and books and texts pre this period of time. You actually can't find most species in most of the world in books and paintings and things until these times. There just wasn't good documentation of it. I was just reading about this in a totally separate book for a totally separate reason, but it's just true. Natural history and the absolute, like, let's get every species documented and all of its, categorize everything. That's a very modern thing. Even Steinbeck went out and was like documenting just the ocean life right on the coast of California in the 20th century. And that was like unprecedented. Like we just did not have, and he didn't even get them all. And he was trying to get as many as he could and draw them and describe them and write them. It's one of these beautiful natural history books. It's not weird that there's no pandas. Not even a little bit weird, actually. It's such a good question, and it leads you to such cool understandings about history and about how recent a lot of our really intricate knowledge is. And that's cool, but it's actually not weird at all. So I also thought it was so weird until I sort of started thinking about it and why could that be? And yeah, it actually makes perfect sense. In fact, another post, I think I left it up here for us to talk about. I don't know, we'll get there if we get there, but it's talking about how pandas aren't like a totem animal. They're not like a big, spiritual symbol in China. And if you do look at the art and the descriptions you can find of things, not only do you find some real animals that are quite iconic, like tigers, right? But you also find fake animals like the phoenix and the dragon. And maybe they're real, but like we right now at least see them as fake and mythological. And you do see those, but you don't see hundreds of thousands of actual real species. So if it isn't so important that on the rare time you have someone who does art or can write or can read with paper, with the accoutrements to create, right, pens or ink or whatever, if you rarely have that, like you're going to only put down the things that are so important to you. like the symbology of a lion or a tiger. You're going to only draw or write about the things that are like the most impactful or culturally relevant. And the panda just wasn't. It was a rare species, subspecies of a subspecies that was found in this just drastically hard to enter wilderness that almost no one probably ever went in. Very steep mountainous regions, and lots of species were there that no one had seen. So it makes perfect sense why there's no pandas until 1860 something. Perfect sense. It's actually, you might ask, wow, how cool is it that we even got mention of a panda by then? Because there's so many species that we still didn't get to like the mid 1900s, 20th century. So, so I just had AI summarize here how animals act differently around humans. Well, we saw the bottle feeding. We saw that they're basically raising these pandas in a little amusement park, right? But it's also like all domesticated animals, which you could call pandas at this point. They cannot live in the wild, and they're only living because humans want them to so desperately, and only in this small place in this very strange environment. They're basically domesticated. And it says domesticated animals like dogs and cats have evolved to be more tolerant of and receptive to humans. Their behavior is often shaped by a history of positive interactions and learned social cues. That is the other thing. You might not believe it, whatever, figure it out for yourself. But my chickens very obviously do things that they know that I like. So they'll like flap their wings and like look at me, right? Like almost like, oh, did you see me? I did it. Right? Or they'll come over to me and they'll like, stretch and like put their thing out. They'll like peck at my shoes. And like, this is not stuff they would do just at a random creature in the wild. But they know that I'm going to give them treats and they want to please me, right? They know that I'm going to give them food. And so they want to make sure that I'm happy. Or you could get even more sort of woo-woo about it and say they love me because I've known them for so many years and take care of them and love them back. And so they're just doing things that are fun, just like you would do with your friends. Sure. Either way, they're doing things that they wouldn't necessarily do just randomly and in the wild because this is what they've learned gets them something. Pandas also, they'll like take a tumble and then they'll like look at the zookeeper because they see us laughing and they like understand that we think it's funny and cute and that we're more likely to be nice to them. Just like this is like the language of most living things, actually, is to see the effect you have on the other things around you. See if it's safe, see if it's going to get you good stuff. Like, right? Does babies do it? Like, it's a thing. You can train them, obviously. You can make them do things. This is true of bears in general. It's true of a lot of animals in general. And their environment is definitely going to affect them. So if you have them with seesaws, they're going to learn how to use seesaws. And they're going to look super weird doing it because it's not natural, but it's there. So they do it. So pandas seem real. For a lot of reasons, they seem very strange because they've been for many generations bred by humans in strange environments. They do mostly eat bamboo. It's not weird that they haven't been found in art and history of that region. And it's not weird that they're not doing well in the wild because they're raised here without predators. They're spoon-fed their whole life. You'd become a weird, defenseless thing if that were true of you, too. It's actually quite sad. And so they're real. And by the way, birds are real too. If you didn't know, they are. They're not just government spy drones that recharge on telephone wires and electricity wires. They're actually real birds. And I know you know that, but it's just so funny. It's so funny because it's so clever too. You're like, ooh, recharging on the wires. That's really smart. That's pretty fun. But obviously birds are real. But what is actually weird is that you don't see baby pigeons ever. I actually never realized this until I think a month and a half ago, where I saw a song just like this one about baby pigeons. And it was like, if you see a baby pigeon, let us know, because no one's ever seen one. And I was like, oh my God, I've never seen a baby pigeon. Not even in a picture. Have you seen a baby pigeon? No, I haven't. So there's whole songs that are really funny about do baby pigeons even exist? Do pigeons just come into the world fully formed, or what? What's happening with pigeons? And I'm like, well, I've seen baby robins, bluebirds, all these birds, they fall out of the nest, or I've seen these babies I've never, and videos of the babies. So people have like video cameras where they put in their birdhouse and the birds come in and have their whole family there. So you get to see them grow up. I've seen all these, but I've never seen a pigeon baby. So I was like, that's actually really weird. Why haven't I seen pigeon babies? And apparently there's an answer for that too. It's not a conspiracy. This is also on Reddit. It says, we don't see a lot of baby pigeons because they nest in very secluded caves and hard to get places and have a long nesting period. And when they leave the nest, they're very hard to distinguish from adult pigeons. And they're butt ugly. So here's a picture of a baby pigeon. It really is very weird looking and almost fake looking. I've heard too that pigeons make nests that are just the worst. Like they just have like 4 pieces of grass sort of crisscrossing each other, and then they'll lay an egg on it. So clearly someone's seen them lay and have babies, as is indicated by this picture. But I've heard too, again, the reason why they don't put very much effort into their nest is because they're nesting in places that are so secure, they don't need to worry about it. They're just like, yep, this will be fine. All I need is a couple pieces of grass. I'm good. This baby's going to live. So super funny. Baby pigeons do exist. They're just very rare to see. Very, very rare to see. If you see a baby pigeon, note it. It's a life event. And while we're on the topic of dispelling myths, before we say goodnight, I will share with you that if you've seen a night cam footage of anything, it's fake. It's AI generated. This is like one of the filters AI can use that makes it harder to distinguish that it is AI. And so a lot of people are being fooled by this, like bunches of baby bunnies jumping on a trampoline or a coyote hanging out with a cat. These are often like doorbell cam, night vision sort of footage is what it's supposed to be. I saw one where a bear walks up to the porch and a cat tries to fight it, but then the cat just jumps on its back and they rides the bear away. Like there's just a lot of them. And, you know, weird things happen. A coyote could come to the door with a cat. Bunnies could end up on a trampoline. We've seen very weird, real things that happen, you know, a lot now that the internet exists and there's billions of people using it all the time. You're going to see stuff that is almost unbelievable that is real because there's just so much more chance that you get to see the thing that someone else saw that there was very little chance of even happening, right? This is the nature of having millions of cameras in the hands of millions of people at millions of times all throughout every day, everywhere in the world. You're going to see some weird things that are actually real. So it's normal to imagine this could be real. Just so you know, and you can test your discernment, these aren't real. And so this is actually an article about the AI generated animals and fake surveillance videos that are fooling the internet. And no, nothing is sacred. It asks, is anything sacred? No. You'll make fake videos about anything now. And what's hard is that when you then see real stuff, you might not be able to believe it. When I first saw a picture, going back to the octopus, or a video, I should say, of an octopus changing colors, textures, and shapes in no time at all, literally less than a second, I blew my mind. I was like, is this real life? Like, am I high right now? No, I'm not. It's a real thing. And now if you saw that, you might not be able to trust it. So it is sad. It's sad. It's actually necessary for us to use our discernment this much about very normal things. But what I love about this is it keeps you asking questions instead of landing on permanent answers. Because as I've talked about with you so many times before, we are never served by imagining that we have the final answer of anything. It doesn't help us actually to say, like, yep, that's it, and we're done, and let's never think about it again. No matter what it is, like, you are best served if you constantly have a question mark in your mind about everything. It doesn't mean that you pretend you don't know anything. You at least go forward with the best guess you have so far, and that's totally appropriate. But if you have no ability to also question literally anything, anywhere, at any time, that's not best serving you. So you don't have to know. If you watch a video and you're like, I'm not sure if that's AI or not, that's okay. That's actually one of the best places where you can be, is to say, I'm not sure. That's okay. I don't know if these people are genuinely cleaning this whale or not. Well, I actually do know this is fake, but you know, you might see this and not know. And that's okay. And what you shouldn't do is say, oh, this is real for sure. or this is fake for sure. And we talk about this with news. We talk about this with, possible false flags, is that actually this is the best place to be. If something event happens and it's like blowing up the airwaves, you're seeing it everywhere, the best thing you can do is say, this might be real and it might not be. Not even because of AI, because somebody could have pulled this off and it could be a false flag. It could be not an actual event. It could be acted, or it could be misattributed or misunderstood. So if you start from that place, it's actually the best way to go forward. If you start from the place, if you look at any video and say, this might be real and it might not be real, that's the best place you can start from. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not scary. It's actually where we should have been all along. AI is doing us a favor by reminding us that that's the best mindset to have. And this is actually something I help people do. It's one of the many services I offer, is increasing your discernment and your ability to understand what is real and what is not, and which questions to ask and how to do that. And so I actually have tips and tricks that can help you if that's something you're genuinely worried about. We can work on that together. So I have all kinds of things that I offer here on my Calendly. You can get to this through roguesoul.org. But One Day of Brightness is coming up in September. Some people have already booked that. If you know, you know. If you don't know, it's a very beautiful, high energy series of blessings and messages from Source. Myself and Catherine O'Shea bring you these events every solstice and equinox. And so the next one we're doing as close to the equinox as we could get it with our schedules. So September 27th, that's coming up. Lightning Oracle Round as a group comes together. These are all via Zoom, all distance, doesn't matter where you're at. And I channel through some messages from your spiritual guides and allies. It can be an answer to a question, or it can be just a general message you want to receive from your allies. Super beautiful. Often the group is really amazing, and it's a blessing and healing experience in itself. But it's every other Tuesday, and so you can sign up for one of those if you want to connect with your spiritual guides and allies in a much easier and more accessible way. I do tarot readings. I do spiritual guidance sessions where I directly channel your spiritual guides and allies, bring through healing and blessings. That's a really powerful, life-changing experience. I also do sound healing, and I also send blessings from afar. But if you wanted to talk about discernment and increasing your ability to be discerning and to actually use your consciousness and your connection to truth in general, source in general, to discern what's real and what's not, that's one of the skills that I teach people. And so coaching and talk session could be perfect for you. I also just work with people on everything: spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, life goals, all sorts of stuff. So that's also here on Calendly, which you can get to calendly.com/rogueways, or you can get there through my site, roguesoul.org, by clicking on schedule a session or book a session or anything that sounds like that. So if you're not sure if birds are real, it's okay. If you're not sure if octopus are real, it's okay. And if you're not sure what's AI and what's not AI, it's okay. If you're not sure about pandas being real or not, it's okay. None of it actually really matters. And you can actually get to the point where you do know and you trust yourself to know, and you retain the eternal question mark of being able to question what you thought you knew. So all of that is possible. And until you know it, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.
Glued to these screens, it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones, a holly suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The paupers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.